Hello everyone and welcome back to Game Week 1 of the 25-26 Slater and Gordon Premiership, where you join myself, Ryan Sipple, and Charlie McClellan for the final game of the day. On Court B, it is Aspire versus Middlesbrough. Give me your assessments, Charlie.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this one. It's been a really tough fixture for Aspire in the recent history. Middlesbrough are a very good defensive side, very compact. I really like their goalkeeper, James Found. I think he's quality. Yeah, I think Middlesbrough, they're just a team that they're really solid. And Aspire, well, they need to win. Obviously, they dropped points earlier to West Brom, which they'll be really frustrated with because of sort of recent history has taught them that they can win that fixture against West Brom. I think they've won it twice in a row competitively coming into that one, and it was a very cagey 0-0. But if they win this, then they'll get back on track and then be ready for the two fixtures tomorrow. And for Middlesbrough, well, they've had two 1-0 losses, and there's one that they'll look back on and think it's not a terrible result. Against West Brom, they were competitive in that game throughout, and they had chances, but the one that will be the real kicker for Middlesbrough was the Throssell's result this afternoon. Obviously, no disrespect to Throssell's, but that's like a game that they'll look at and think this is a potential chance to get a very big 3 points on the board. And Throssell's just seem to offer a lot more in terms of just like the grit and the determination to win that game. And Middlesbrough will be looking to bounce back, but I'm sure against a team like Aspire, they will have no issues whatsoever stepping up their game and really putting in a good performance. So yeah, it's going to be a good game. That's a roundabout way of me saying it's going to be a very interesting clash. And I really just hope that, while I hope it's competitive, I also hope that the game is open enough that we get to see both sides really play their own style of football and get the ball moving. And I remember last year in this fixture there were some great goals, and I just hope that that's the same in this one.
Yeah, to go through the squads quickly. For Aspire, Salim McNeil, Dan McClellan, John Balding, Jordan Williams, Rich George, Tom Kelly and John Dixon. And for Middlesbrough, they have Ethan Galloway, James Found, Kath Goldsborough, Carl Forster, Umar Hanif, Thomas Pettigrew and Ellie Renton. But the captains are in the centre just to determine who gets kick-off. I have to say, having watched both of Teesside's games today, a 7-0 win over Throssell's, a 6-0 win over GBG Knight, they are the benchmark. They have been simply sensational.
Yeah, I mean, we've got that game together tomorrow afternoon, don't we? Aspire versus Teesside. That will be the real test for Aspire this weekend to show how far they've come in the last year. But yeah, they're so good, so good. They understand each other so well. The positional rotations, the fluidity of the way they play. Every pass is crisp and accurate, and they just brush teams aside like it's nothing. It's so like nonchalant the way they just win these games. They just cruise through, scoring goals, beautiful goals, and then they're on to the next.
Yeah, exactly that. The scary thing is, in their victories today, I don't think they've got out of second gear. I think they've been so efficient in managing the squad, being just the 4 players available for Game Week 1. I'm convinced, Charlie, they've scored goal of the season already, though.
Yeah.
One of their strikes against GBG Knights is one of the best goals I've seen in the National League.
Who scored it?
It was converted by Mitch Tinkler, but it was the assist. It was the dummy from Ed Common. I couldn't explain it. I was lost for words. It was I think the 5th goal that they scored in that win for anyone wanting to watch it.
I will definitely be going back and recapping that and the other games of football that I haven't been able to see today.
Middlesbrough, yeah, as you said, coming off the back of that Throssell's defeat, it was so cagey, having watched it and commentated it. It was always going to be decided by a moment of quality or a moment of luck. It was certainly the former. The assist from Thomas Donaher to Abigail Bolt split James Found and Umar Hanif open. And already Borough under some intense pressure as Aspire looked to right the wrong of that 0-0 draw against West Brom, one in which they would have desperately wanted the win against their familiar foes.
Yeah, I think that was a real frustrating one for them. They got the ball moving a bit. They were very dominant in the first half of Spire. They came out with a real intent, and then the second half, the game just completely fizzled out, and it wasn't the best game I've watched, I'm going to be honest. It was competitive, but more implicitly competitive, as in you saw the tactical thought that was going into everything. You didn't see a huge level of quality on display.
In the last, discounting last year, in the 5, 6, 7 years prior to that, that has been the title race. It has been a 2-horse race, and they've always typically cancelled each other out. And if you was to epitomise it and summarise it in one word, the matchups between West Brom and Aspire, you'd say cagey, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
And that's exactly what was the case. As Carl Forster looks to attempt an effort on goal.
Very
Switch
Marco
up.
Diaz.
Yeah, very Marco Diaz. Unorthodox striking of the ball, but a notable switch up for John Balding as he's opted for Jordan Williams as the goalkeeper.
Yeah, Tom Kelly's not here. He's gone back to the hotel. I don't think he was feeling too well, so not worth the risk of staying around and potentially just making yourself more ill, going back and resting up. They'll back Jordan Williams in goal for a game such as this, and they need their keeper for tomorrow's games against Teesside especially.
James Found into Umar Hanif. Strange placement that of Kath Goldsborough. She just kind of drove across.
Yeah, very bizarre thing to do.
Incredibly strange, having watched it back as well. Just cushioned out to Dan McClellan, trying to combine with his captain.
Yeah, Dan was just trying to find the reverse spin of John Balding there. Goldsborough just whacks it down the line.
You can see what Balding wanted to do there, just feint James Found, but he was wise to it.
Yeah, I thought he'd done it as well, to be fair. That was my noise, my Gary Neville-esque background noise, just really dangerous from Found there.
Stretching the court into John Dixon. Nice series of passes. Cut out by Umar Hanif. Edging their way up the court, slowly but surely.
Yeah, they're doing well to just get those triangles moving. But they want to be a bit more intricate in and around the penalty area. That's what the real money in this game is for Aspire. They're one of the best teams I've seen at it this week so far. Obviously Teesside, yes, but Greenbank, when they get that ball in and around the penalty area, they don't move the ball massively when they've got it in their own half like Aspire do. They don't try and play out particularly, but when they get that ball in that dangerous area, the final third, the way that they move the ball between, well, usually it's Book Platt, Marcus Harrison, and then Liam Fitzpatrick or Crarup when he pushes up, is fantastic. Dan McLean doesn't get a connection on that spinnied one.
In the two meetings in 24-25, both went Aspire's way. 3-1 victories on both occasions. And they have their opener. A very familiar combination between John Dixon and his alternate winger, Dan McClellan. It's exactly what they wanted to do. Just to get on the scoreboard, not give Borough an opportunity to grow in confidence.
Yeah, them linking up again, those two. Dicko across towards Dan McClellan at the back post, and just the power on the pass, the power on the finish. That's exactly what Aspire have become known for. It's just the accuracy and precision of the passing. As Dan McClellan looks to pick it back, just took a last-minute touch. But now, I mean, this is they're giving them so much space in behind here. Aspire, Middlesbrough, really risky play as Denise picks it off. And they're just doing what Teesside often do and being quite positionally fluid here. John Boulding's out on the wing with Dan McClellan in the centre. Boulding doesn't get that pass right, and then it's quite a neat touch from Kath Goldsborough.
John Dixon now on the alternate wing with Dan McClellan in the centre. I like this fluidity, this flexibility in the shape. We don't see it often, Dan McClellan operating in the centre due to that being John Boulding's position. But if and when he has featured there, the world-class levels haven't dipped, they haven't dropped. I mean, my thoughts, Charlie, go immediately to that Krafto Villeneuve Dask fixture in the Club World Cup when John Boulding was suspended and Dan McClellan made easy work of Brian Weiss, one of the best players on the planet.
Yeah, now that's an interesting contact foul there. Caroline Goldsborough, Kath Goldsborough, definitely was a foul from her on Dan McClellan. She just whacked his chair as he was going forward. But you think in the running game, that's a yellow card every day of the week.
She should have been booked in their Throssell's game. She's a very aggressive player. She doesn't shy away from the contact. 2-on-1 awarded to Middlesbrough. So Boulding's strike over the line won't count as a goal. Some appeals from Dan McClellan.
He's given it in favour of us.
It's very strange.
They've just got... Yeah, weird.
Yeah, a strange decision from Pete Westmoreland. The ball over the line, squeezed through the defence, but somehow, some reason, they come away with a free kick. Won't be overly happy with that. It amounts to nothing in the end. Not a great deal of appeals from the Aspire players, mind you, so maybe something they understand.
Yeah, or just confusion, I think. It's a difficult one. This is why I love an insight into the referee's decision making, because like he probably communicated it very well with the players.
Yeah,
but when we're sat here, it's so tough.
We've often said we'd love to get a line into the referees' mics. I know they don't mic up at the National League as they do at international events, but we would love to kind of convey the messages and be clear in our commentary as to why certain decisions have gone certain ways. 9.5 minutes played. Aspire 1, Middlesbrough 0. John Dixon just flicked off the back wheel of James Found. They're persisting with this setup, Aspire, with Dan, the orchestrator, in the centre.
Yes, Teesside do it very well. That when they, Tyler gets drawn wide and Ed Conman comes in, and even sometimes Mitch Tinkler takes up that role.
Just playing it off Kath Goldsborough to generate some power, some momentum. He's missing a little bit of quality based on the high standards that Aspire typically set. I think we have to give credit to Middlesbrough, disrupting those passing lanes.
Yeah, and to be fair to Middlesbrough as well, that looked like a really good passing move from Aspire there, where they were just knocking it around, but they actually didn't make a lot of progress. As Dan's, oh, I really thought he was going to absolutely smash that on the reverse spin. It looked like just for a second it had sat right for him. But no, just a tiny bit too much power. But what I was saying is Middlesbrough, they're moving the ball. They're allowing Aspire to move the ball deep and then just cutting off the penalty area, which I actually think is a good tactic to use against Aspire. As scary as it is when they're doing the big triangles around you, if they're not like in behind you, or they're not like, you know, able to go through you, as in you leave a gap in the middle, they really can't threaten. And that's what I think Middlesbrough have realised here, is that as long as they just cut out the balls into the penalty area like that, they'll be fine.
Jordan Williams called into defensive duties. Hasn't had a great deal to do in the 12 minutes we've played.
Yeah, been very isolated as Forster's one-on-one with Boulding. Wasn't a huge amount he could do with it, to be honest, and he backed the England captain to just get that ball away.
Dixon. Dan McClellan just reverses into Kath Goldsborough there. Brave play from the Borough number 7.
Yeah, I think it's just one of those unlucky ones. Dan had no idea that she was behind him.
There was no malice, no intent, but it is the responsibility of Dan in that situation to be aware of his surroundings and other players on the court. So we're going to get a short break in play, which gives me an opportunity to talk about the game currently on Court A. West Bromwich Albion nil, Newcastle United Foundation nil. Should Newcastle come away with the 3 points in that one, they will end the day top of the table. It's a big ask though against West Bromwich Albion.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a fantastic statement. I've been impressed with Newcastle today, and especially with Ollie Crawshaw, who looks to have stepped up. I mean, I think a lot of people, to be fair, knowing the character that Ollie is and the quality he has, very few people were predicting him to not be able to step up. That said, I think I've even been impressed with the extent to which he did it. I thought Villa earlier was a really tough game for them, and he just looked like, to use the phrase I used, like a duck to water. He's just taken to it so well and looks so confident. And obviously they're playing against West Brom now with some of the best players in the country, and sounds robust. I can hear a lot of chair battles over there and little nicks off the chairs and contact and stuff, but yeah, I think he's just running that game, and he'll be running things for Newcastle this season massively. And Cole and Kieran on the wings obviously are really good options. Cole especially, it's a season for him to step up. When he was sort of the secondary winger last season, he's now the first winger. So it feels like everyone in that team's been promoted. And yeah, I'm really excited about Newcastle this season.
Yeah, as am I. Highlighted Ollie Crawshaw on a recent podcast as one to watch. I think he's going to step up his level significantly in 25-26 and put his name in the conversation for England selection. Maybe Argentina will be one cycle too soon, but beyond that there is absolutely no question about his quality being considered for a senior call-up. I think we got 3 in the box there.
I think it was
again
contact foul.
Didn't see or hear any contact, but that is the decision from Pete Westmoreland.
It didn't seem a bad enough foul for that vigorous of flag waving, but there we are.
I rate the energy this late on day one. Contact there. Umar Hanif, fairly cynical. That's a yellow card.
It's another one. It's like stopping of a promising attack, and they don't really get given very much in Powerchair, but Middlesbrough, they're lucky because that was very intentional from Umar.
I wonder if that's the discussion here. It's a yellow card all day long, but Umar Hanif is going to get a talking to now. Final warning. Very lenient from Pete Westmoreland. Not that I ever want to be a match official, but that is a yellow card as John Dixon punishes them a different way. Just they turn it on so quickly.
Yeah, it's moving players, isn't it? It's so important. John Boulding made that dummy run. Dan's ball across was pretty much exactly what you'd want, and it was on a plate at the back post for John Dixon, and those are the kind of chances he's become very accustomed and very good at taking. Aspire, I think this is some of the discussions with Aspire is, yes, okay, they've not had their best half, but Middlesbrough have been a really tough team for them in recent years. You know, last season, especially the second game against Middlesbrough, they had to dig really deep, and it was 3-1 in the end, but it was 1-1 until sort of 32, 33 minutes, and they got quite a lucky goal. And so the fact that they've just come out and looked controlled, looked composed, it is 100% an improvement on the way they played against them last season. And even 2 weeks ago, Aspire hosted the Madeleine Steele Invitational tournament, where they had loads of teams from the Premiership there as like a pre-season event, and they drew 0-0 with Middlesbrough in that. So they'll be seeing signs of improvement, Aspire, and seeing the way that they've come out and just looked quite composed. Saturday 4:30 when they played a big game today, and they'll probably be quite pleased as, oh, he's just...
It's a very physical game, isn't it? You can see the appeals of Rich George.
You think, I mean, yeah, maybe they drove into each other, but maybe there wasn't much consequence of the contact, but it looked
I think James Found just swiped into Rich George.
I think Middlesbrough are a very... And there's nothing wrong with this, by the way. This is not a criticism, but what a great ball from Rich George.
Physical and aggressive?
Physical, I wouldn't say aggressive. I think there's little malice behind it.
No, I don't mean that when I say aggressive. I like aggression. I like when they're battling for every ball. And they've just split Middlesbrough open there. That combination play. John Boulding out to Rich George, who just switched it out to Dan McClellan, driving onto it.
Yeah, he's made a hell of an impact, Rich George. He came on, he played a great pass across to Dan McClellan, and it didn't result in a goal, and then that was just great play. Rich George, and you can tell when a player's been appreciated when they didn't even go over to the goal scorer Dan. All the players went over to Rich George and gave him the credit for that goal.
It's great to see him back competing in the top flight.
Yeah, and I think he's been working very hard to get himself back up to the level that he feels he needs to be at to play for a club like Aspire, and you know that his performances since coming on have been very, very good.
It's now 4 goals and 3 assists for Dan McClellan in the 3 games they've played. Really nice accumulation. I think we've seen a real shift in Aspire in years gone by, that the responsibility has been taken off the shoulders of John Boulding, who used to be the player they look to for the goals and the creativity. He now facilitates on the periphery and it creates a foundation, a platform for the wide wingers to combine beautifully. And whether it's Dan McClellan and John Dixon, whether it's John Dixon and Rich George, whether it's Rich George and Dan McClellan, it clicks, it flows, and it's so effective.
Yeah, I think, and also I think like Dan and John are very easy players to play with. Like, you know you're going to get the ball in good positions, you're going to get service, and so all you have to do is just go into it with an open mind and back yourself, and generally playing in Aspire is a very good deal, as John Boulding just smacks it off the Middlesbrough chair.
Out to Rich George, good save from Umar Hanif. Can't ask much more from the Aspire number 11 there. Sharp, decisive action, clean connection. That's all about the save from Umar Hanif, covering that ground and space on the Middlesbrough goal line.
Yeah, I mean, perfectionist. He could maybe put it slightly more in the corner, but yeah, he did very well. And generally, if you put that much power on a back post finish, you're scoring. So quite unlucky.
Nice switch of play from John Balding. Rich George. They're the little bits of naivety that creep into his game, and they're what he'll want to work on. Placement, intention, execution. But a brilliant first half of football for Aspire, who lead Middlesbrough by 3-0. Hello everyone and welcome back. Final half of the day here in Game Week 1 of the 25-26 Slater and Gordon Premiership. We join myself, Ryan Sipple, alongside Charlie McClellan for Aspire versus Middlesbrough. A brilliant first half for Aspire, who are looking to end the day on a high. Clearly taking out their frustration on Middlesbrough following that goalless draw against West Bromwich Albion. Give me your assessments on the first half, Charlie.
Yeah, I thought it was a very good performance. Very good. Maybe they didn't play their best football, but they played some really nice stuff, don't get me wrong. But it was a very professional performance from Aspire in that first half. They were composed. They took their goals well. They had other chances. I thought Middlesbrough were very physical and very lucky to get away with not maybe a couple of bookings, but yeah, they'll look back at it and they'll see that Aspire, that it was a very good performance, and they've got that same four on that were absolutely knocking the ball around at the end of that first half.
Yeah, if they've stayed with the tried and tested formula, Middlesbrough have done the complete opposite. They brought on two Scotland internationals, Ethan Galloway, the captain, and Thomas Pettigrew. Interesting to see what they add to this performance. It's a good pressing play from Ethan Galloway. Jordan Williams hesitates as to how to engage it, which just invites that press from Borough.
Yeah, I don't mind it, to be fair. There wasn't a huge amount of options. Both of the wingers were marked out of it, and John Boulding was not in any position to receive the ball, so just get rid of it, get rid of the danger. They'll really want a clean sheet here, Aspire.
Down the line, Dan McClellan back in the centre, just feints Ethan Galloway. No real direction on the eventual pass. Very congested. Advantage played by Pete Westmoreland.
Again, Dan McClellan's found himself in the centre a lot in this game, which isn't usual. 2-on-1 against McClellan and Boulding.
McClellan.
Intelligent from Ethan Galloway. He's a very intelligent player. I made my coaching debut. A few weeks ago at the Aspire Invitational. I was coaching a team of mixed players. I had Chris Gordon, I had Dan McClellan, I had Ethan Galloway, I had Matt Gilbert in my team, and we had Thomas Pettigrew actually as well. And we were tactically very good. Obviously the referee booked me for inappropriate touchline behaviour, which I won't be commenting on.
That doesn't surprise me in the slightest.
Yeah, well, but we came up with a very good kick-off routine as well, devised by us in the team talk, where just as we were about to kick off, I shouted switch, and all of the players changed positions in a clockwise circle. And I saw Ethan Galloway today, and he said, "You know what, Charlie?" He said, "I'm very surprised I haven't seen teams at the National League using a kick-off." And I said, I'm the same. And he told me he'd do it in this game, and I haven't seen it yet, so I'm hoping. I'm holding out hope.
Are you trying to explain to the listening audience that you're the Pep Guardiola of the Powerchair Football?
Basically, I invented kickoffs.
Nice and modest, eh? Certainly having more territory in the Aspire half with the introduction of Ethan Galloway. Ricochets kindly to Rich George, puts it over to Dan McClellan. Had he just got the angle on it, Dan McClellan would have had a clear sight at goal. Rich George was appealing for it, but I would have deemed him the aggressor. He was reversing into Umar Hanif, but they come away with a free kick before that. Does Thomas Pettigrew get to warning? Opportunity to trial a different set piece, enticing Umar Hanif, who needs to maintain 5 metres. Probably just about did, but right on the line.
Yeah, I would like to see Dan McClellan pick that ball off.
You'll obviously watch back the Teesside victories. They tried one set piece, which was unlike anything I've seen before, where the 4 Teesside attacking players, well, the 4 players, surrounded a single ball like a cross.
What?
And then disbanded at the last second. It didn't amount to anything, but it was so unique. They were playing very brave 4-out system at the time.
Did it work?
Not necessarily. So they all took different positions in different parts of the courts, but they started in a cross shape around the ball.
Do you think it could work? Or is
It's
this another, like...
It's difficult to say because you're all starting in the same position. You can't necessarily generate the power on the secondary ball because you're reversing at the same time. I'd love to be proven wrong. I'm sure it's worked in training as to why they're experimenting with it at National League level. That's a loose pass that from John Boulding. Had Thomas Pettigrew been a little bit more clinical with his attempt, he could have forced it towards Jordan Williams.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that cross malarkey. Sounds like the kind of thing I would have come up with.
Have a look and give me your assessments. It's a beautiful ball that from Dan McClellan. Just that sharpness missing. Opportunity, good closing play from James Found. Creates the angles, but slight confusion as you've seen. John Boulding apologise to Rich George.
Yeah, I think it was one of those where either of those could have engaged that. Just
no, I've watched it back. I don't think John Boulding is in the wrong there because I think it's too deep for Rich George to engage it without having to force it back. Maybe if John Boulding dropped off, Rich George could have engaged it with the front bumper, but there was no attempt, there was no opportunity at goal on that chance. So it just needed one of them to commit.
Well, it's good captaincy from John Boulding.
Yeah,
taking the rap, especially for a new player.
He settled in nicely though, hasn't he?
Yeah, definitely.
Found a rhythm, found some form, and it's just that little bit of sharpness and rust that no doubt will be taken out of his game the more he plays. Again, that hesitancy, just commit to the front bumper there.
Yeah, Aspire, I think, train very well. You look at how generally, when they get new players in, you look at John Dixon last season, it takes a little bit of time, but they generally get the principles of the system very quickly and can put in really good performances. I know John Dixon only really exploded onto the scene at the end of last season, but even from the first weekend, he was scoring goals.
Absolutely.
He was pivotal to their success, and that just shows that I think they clearly know how to explain the system to new players and really bed people in quickly.
If players are impressionable and willing to buy into the system, their performances, their form, their status can just explode. I mean, John Dixon's been nothing short of a revelation since he's signing, and if Rich George can capture 50% of that, you've got a serious option. He's only 5 goals, sorry, away from 100 National League strikes.
That's one way to stop a John Boulding pass, by the way. Form a blockade of 2 players who are basically touching in front. A very straightforward 2-on-1.
It's the work that Aspire do off the ball, their positioning, their anticipation, which sets them apart from most opponents. Substitutes signalled by the officials. Thomas Pettigrew off, Carl Forster on. Now this is a setup I've wanted to see from Borough. The pivot pairing in the centre of James Found and Umar Hanif, and then the fully fledged internationals, Carl Forster from Northern Ireland and Ethan Galloway of Scotland on the wings. That is an exciting lineup.
Yeah, that's, I think, I always say if I was a coach, I understand it's so much more complex, but if I had to put out a team at Middlesbrough without seeing any training or anything, I think that's the side that I would pick.
John Balding had a sight of goal there, just reluctant to really pull the trigger.
Rick George will take this. They've dropped off massively here in terms of not the pace of the game, as in the players have gone very deep for this, the lead up to this. It's going to be a late run into the box. Oh wow,
that's a fantastic goal. The dummy, the screen of John Balding. Don't take anything away from the distribution from Rich George as well. It is millimetres away from the front bumper of the Aspire captain, but sails all the way through to Dan McClellan, and that could be the pick of the bunch.
Yeah, very much could be. That was a great set piece. I think the third, either that or the fourth goal. Is Aspire going to make a change? And very rare at the National League that you see John Balding take himself off, but he's placing a lot of trust in his number 7, and as you mentioned, that Villeneuve game and other performances, and also the way that he's dropped into the middle quite a lot in this game, you can understand why.
Yeah, a chance for Dan McClellan to really make that central position his own. Got a very healthy buffer. No doubt Sally McNeil will want to get her 25-26 campaign underway with a goal. But a frustrating day for Middlesbrough, who look like they will leave with 3 defeats from 3. Very cagey 1-0 defeat to West Bromwich Albion. Likewise, West Bromwich Albion throttles. But this one, Aspire have been a class above. And Jordan Williams, as was the case in the first 20 minutes, nothing more than a spectator.
Yeah, I think it's a case of just composure and coolness. One thing I would say about Middlesbrough is, I know you say it's 3 defeats from 3, but they've got great togetherness in that squad. They really do fight for each other, and they'll still, I think, be smiling and enjoying their stuff after the game. So
this result is the exception, not the rule. I think the 1-0 defeats earlier today are more representative of their compactness, their defensive organisation, and they'll no doubt take confidence from those 2 results despite the point accumulation. I think a consolation goal, their first of the campaign, will give them something to take away from day one. They're not going to get it on that occasion though. Rolls out of play. McClellan into Rich George. 2-on-1 in Aspire's favour. Still goalless on Court A between West Bromwich Albion and Newcastle United Foundation. McClellan into Sally McNeil. Just not set for that secondary ball, which puts McClellan under some pressure, but just out of nowhere manages to break the press of Ethan Galloway. Looks an almost certain interception from the Scot. Starting position, not necessarily there. Good break-up play from Galloway. Another substitute signalled. Kath Goldsborough back on. Cole Forster, the player coming off.
It's only just come on.
James Found. Nice control from Ethan Galloway. I'd like to see him stay in reverse there and try and catch up to it that way. Constantly trying to feint, create the space. Rich George with an opportunity. Slightly forced. I think the option to Sally McNeil across the box would have yielded a greater end result. Stan McClellan comes off, and this is an interesting lineup for Aspire. Now John Dixon in the centre. Such a clean strike straight away.
He strikes the ball so pure.
He really does.
Side hit is what, like, it's like, you know, on FIFA you've got play style pluses. He's got the side hit one. Like, he just, I've never seen a player who just gets such a clean and powerful connection on every single one.
I think the perfect example of that is the assist to Dan McClellan in the FA Disability Cup final. Just it doesn't look like the pace of the ball allows that generation of power over to Dan McClellan, but he found it. I absolutely agree. It's the rotation, it's the timing, it's the part of his chair he uses to connect with the ball.
Yeah, very, very good. Look at the substitute bench for Aspire. Don't think many teams in the league would mind having those two options to bring on. It just shows the depth of Aspire's squad that they can have those two players on the bench and still, you know, have a good Premiership side out there.
They'll need to have big seasons. Dan McClellan and John Bolden in the lead up to Buenos Aires. John Dixon. Not too unfamiliar, that central role for him. Operated there on many occasions with West Bromwich Albion Throstles. So versatile, he can play in any position on the court. Good pick off from Sally McNeil, 180. I think he was looking to return the pass to Sally McNeil there.
Or maybe even miss Sally McNeil out and go to that back post where Rich George was lurking,
been nice.
Hungry for another goal.
Ethan Galloway. Final few minutes. If today wasn't enough to get your Powerchair Football fix, we'll be live from 9:15 tomorrow for another action-packed day in Game Week 1 of the Slater and Gordon Premiership. Middlesbrough open against title hopefuls Leeds. West Bromwich Albion against Greenbank should be another fantastic matchup. Marcus Harrison against his former side.
Yeah, that's going to be a great game. I would based on what I've seen today, would give Greenbank a serious chance in that.
Yeah, Greenbank were fantastic earlier today against Villa. 2 wins from 2. Strong play from Umar Hanif, just drove into the side of Rich George, completely waved away from Pete Westmoreland. Very lenient officiating. Who's your player of the match, Charlie?
Oh, it's a good question. It's an Aspire player because obviously they're the 4-0 winners. Dan McClellan?
Yeah, I mean, they've rotated, they switched things up significantly. So there's been no constants, but Dan has been very crucial to what will be a very impressive 3 points.
Rich George has also played a big part off the bench, and John Boulding, obviously. It's very hard to look past John when Aspire play well because...
But the hat-trick from Dan McClellan is helping them. Looks as if it's ended goalless on Court A. So West Brom, seemingly from their results, being incredibly hard to break down.
Yeah, it's a great result for Newcastle. I saw when the full-time whistle went, there was just a muted celebration from Ollie Crawshaw because it's a great performance. He must have played really well in the middle to sort of keep West Brom at bay.
Well, I've said he's knocking on the door for the England senior side. He's so good, and this is a big season for him. As the referee blows the whistle for full time, a fantastic performance from Aspire. Let's bring up the live league table so you can see how things end on day one. Aspire top the standings due to a more favourable goal difference than Newcastle United Foundation. They have played a game more than the likes of Teesside, Leeds and Greenbank, which sets up a fantastic day 2 of Game Week 1. Thank you to all that have tuned in. Hope you can join us again tomorrow. See you then.